from the Ritter in beautiful downtown Guanacaste, Costa Rica. Each day is prettier than the last. It's a gorgeous time of year, and we have an amazing, just the weather's been just absolutely beautifully amazing. I love it here. Rythmia is a life advancement center like no other in the world. What makes us different is the program that goes into the ayahuasca experience. And the programming is everything. And by programming, we have hours and hours and hours of classes prior to ceremony, so that you know exactly what you're getting into, and a little bit about driving the medicine before your experience. And it's the end result between all of the different modalities: yoga, meditation, breath work, food, cleanse, teachings, one-on-one counseling. This whole thing gets tied together in a ceremony, and what ends up happening is a soul merger or a soul reclamation. How do we know this occurs? We have over 16,000 guests that have been through this program. 98.31%, the highest it's ever been. 983 out of every 1,000 people say that they had a life-changing miracle during their stay. Life-changing miracle during their stay. Better yet, 90.22% at the 6-month mark. Get another survey. So 90 out of 100 say that this was the week that changed their life. Not 60 out of 100, 90 out of 100 say that this was the week that changed their life. As a result of the enormous amount of people that have had this experience, the word of mouth has been so great. So many people from all walks of life come here and have this experience. Normal people like you and me. And then you have billionaires and actresses and actors and people from the music industry, musicians and musical artists and regular art artists and sports figures of the highest realm, civil rights leaders. People from all over the world come here and have this happen. Now, our board of directors has amazingly eclectic participation. So Kelly Surfer, the greatest surfer of all, Kelly Slater, the greatest surfer of all time. Martin Luther King's son, Martin, the civil rights leader. Michael Bernard Beckwith, the founder of the Agape Spiritual Center. Jack Canfield, the author, Chicken Soup of the Soul. Ron White, the comedian. Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer. Frank Biden, the civil rights leader, brother of Joe Biden. Tony Coe, she's a Fortune 100 wealthiest self-made women in the world every year. Anywhere from 40 to 70, she's in there. Started a company called NYX Cosmetics that a lot of the women will know. Earl Koski, the businessman. Brandy Sabella, my ex-wife, who helped me build this place in the very beginning, and a wonderful, wonderful human. Anyway, yesterday, and I'm sure I left some out of that, I'm just not thinking, but yesterday we had this big board meeting. I'm looking up and I'm seeing all these people that really are dying to help us. Like everybody on that board, all those people are fully invested in the growth and well-being of Rythmia, in the spread of this message, plant medicine, with this program throughout the world. One thing that we know for sure is that once someone has this soul merger or soul reclamation, that their life is forever changed. And usually the byproduct is that they decide to become a beneficial presence on the planet. Now, last week, someone had a question, why does that happen? And I believe it's because in the medicine, they really understand the gift that this garden of a planet has given them in the form of their life, and they want to better it. That's why people decide to become a beneficial presence. Now, there are a trillion ways to become a beneficial presence on the planet. You can start your own company that serves humanity. You can be a restaurateur. You can be an energy worker yourself. You can build a beautiful family. You can have beautiful relationships. All those things are ways of becoming a beneficial presence on the planet. Now, if you're one of those who decides that under the medicine, you saw a vision so big and it encompassed so much, and you decide to answer that call and become a beneficial presence in the way that the medicine has asked you. What is that like? Well, that is the hardest thing you will ever do. It's an undertaking beyond any kind of undertaking you've ever done in your life. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done. And because of that, perseverance becomes a big, big part of that mission. And yesterday when I was looking at the board, and a lot of them were on Zoom, and I saw Jack Canfield. And a few weeks ago or a week ago, I did a podcast with Jack, and I just thought about him and what happened in his life and how most people quit. They're one more try away from success when they quit. In his particular instance, right? His book called Chicken Soup of the Soul. Yeah, that was his book. But he went to 130 publishers who all turned him down before someone said yes. And now, after that person said yes, Chicken Soup of the Soul was one of the most successful books in the history of literature ever written. I believe over 50 million copies sold, I believe. That's like a quarter, or not a quarter, 20% of the people who live in the United States bought that book. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And that made me think like about all of the people. And I started looking at something. And in the 80s, there was a guy named Ross Perot who was like one of the first mega rich people that made a lot of popularity. And his thing was, most people give up just when they're about to achieve success. They quit on the 1 yard line. They give up at the last minute of the game, 1 foot from the winning touchdown. And that is so true, because this soul merger is asking God, asking the universe to give you the ceremony of your life, wrought with challenges, wrought with uh, tests. And those tests will always have a temptation to quit. It will always look easier for you to turn to the thing on the left than continue with the hard battle that you decided to undertake. Now, and that's absolutely true. And there's a million stories of people that really did huge things that had a ton of rejection before their success happened. Like Jack Ma, the guy from Alibaba. He applied for 30 different jobs and was rejected from all those jobs. He applied to Harvard 10 different times and was denied each time. And then formed Alibaba, and he's one of the richest people in the world. Couldn't even get a job at KFC. So what I'm telling you is this, is that you're going to have, if you decide to do this, you're going to have a million opportunities to quit, a million reasons to say, I'm not going to do it today, but only one reason to move forward, because you said you would. That's why this one promise, the promise that I'm not going to quit until I get it. I'm not going to let anybody talk me out of it. And I want to talk about that. There are going to be 100 people around you. Uh-huh. And I'm going to say a big percentage of them will be those people who love you the most, who are watching you in this struggle, who in the most well-meaning manner tell you to quit, tell you that there's an easier way. And those people will be the closest people to you. It might be teachers or counselors or brothers and sisters or family members who are going to tell you to quit. They're going to say things like, there's easier ways to do this. You don't really have any aptitude to become a dancer. You're actually better at this, and they'll point you in a way. And they mean well, but you have to develop a spiritual muscle to say no to them, to say, these people are going to think I'm crazy for moving forward, and I'm going to be embarrassed in my moving forward, but I'm going to do it anyway. And there's a sense of freedom in this, right? There's a beautiful sense of freedom, which is part of the ceremony. So people talk about this. They come out of ceremony, and in ceremony, they were given a lodestar. They were given this thing to become, the way to become this beneficial presence on the planet. And then that journey becomes their next ceremony. And if anybody knows anything about a plant medicine ceremony, it's not all one way. It always has challenges and darkness and this and that, and so does this thing. But it is the most beautiful experience of your life, is to decide to become a beneficial presence, to tell yourself you're not going to quit until somebody stops you, because that can happen, right? So let's say, somebody starts a business and finances it, and they just run out of money, and nobody will give them money. Then you're being stopped. Sometimes we get fired. Sometimes our spouse leaves us. Those are things where you went as far as you could and you were stopped by external things. That is not quitting. Those are usually great events that are looked back at later in life as a gift. What I'm talking about is quitting before any of those things occur. And if you could see it from the astrals, you would be quitting right at the 1 yard line. You were one move away from winning the game when you quit. And if you could see it on plant medicine and it shows it to you, you feel like, oh my God, how dumb of me to have quit all these times, because the counterpart of me that doesn't want me to bring this light to the world looks at all these other options as easier alternatives. But it's not the way. The way to the golden key is on this very thin road, and I have to follow it in spite of it being so high that it scares me. You have to stay the course once you made up your mind to do this. You have to. Now, what keeps you on that course? Your word. Your word to you that you're not going to quit until the bitter end. That is your word to you. And that is the only thing that keeps you there. Like, here's another one. The guy who started Starbucks, he went to over 200 banks looking for his original loan. 241 said no. The 242nd said yes. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine coming home to your spouse, your wife or your husband, and saying, honey, listen, I really still believe in this idea, but 168 banks have turned me down. Do you imagine how silly you would look? Do you imagine how crazy you would look for continuing on? But they did. They did because they made themselves a promise. Now it's easier when this lodestar or this vision that you had came from a merged part of yourself. It has to be. Otherwise, you'll say no. You'll say yes to any other thing as soon as it gets a little hard. That's why it's so important to have this soul merger. And when you're merged, come up with this vision. Because if you come up with it for another reason, and here's some common reasons to come up with an alternative vision or a vision from another place. My mom was a psychiatrist, her mother was a psychiatrist, and they wanted me to be a psychiatrist. That's a bad reason to go down a particular road. Or my neighbors got this stuff and I wanted to impress my neighbors. Those things that you pick from those places won't withstand any ill or inclement weather. They won't. You'll quit. So it's super important that you do it from a merged place. And once you do, you have to honor your word that you made this commitment to yourself to do this thing until the very end. You have to. Otherwise, you will quit at the 1 yard line, minutes away from your winning the game. Minutes away. So my thing to you today is do not quit. No matter what, do not quit. Do not quit. Until next week, God keep you, God hold you, and we will see you next week. And please put in your plans to come to Rythmia, to have this change in your life, to have this new vision, new energy, and new excitement for the future. Come here and get it.